The Holy Gospel of our Savior Jesus Christ according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always, to the end of the age." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
I speak to you in the name of God, who is Father and Spirit and Child. Amen. So, I don't know about you, but I just barely made the deadline and got out my Trinity Sunday cards to send to all my family and loved ones. Everybody else in the same boat? You got yours out in time? Do you celebrate at home? I mean, it's a day, it's a holy day, right? So what does that mean for us? Trinity Sunday. You know, a lot of times we have these holy days which rightly follow the life of Jesus Christ. We mark moments of the chronological life throughout the year, but we also have these moments of this encounter with Jesus that we find in scriptures where Jesus was made known, where God was made known through Jesus to individuals. And those moments of encounter, those individuals who were shaped by that, we mark those throughout the year. And so the holy days, the holy cycle of readings and celebrations follow Jesus. But we do have a few days which remember concepts or ideas about God. Most of the time we're focused on Jesus and the people around Jesus, but a few times we look at concepts and thoughts that have been important for our understanding of who God is and how God works in the world. And this is one of those days, Trinity Sunday. Now the Trinity can be an interesting concept. Yeah, you're right to laugh, Joe. It can be one of those things where if you try to think about it and then try to explain it to your friend who maybe doesn't know anything about Christian tradition or church or even God, if you're trying to put something into words, you'll probably find yourself starting out halfway and starting to explain it and then realize you talk yourself into a corner and maybe you back up a little bit and try to explain it another way, and you maybe stumble a little bit and feel like your words are inadequate to describe this concept. And you're right. You're right. And think about what that means. This isn't just about trying to articulate a theological concept that is beyond any of us. But when we're trying to describe God and the nature of God, our words should be inadequate. Our words most often fall short of the fullness of the experience that we have had and that our ancestors in faith have had, getting to know the God of the universe in our own experience. Our words are going to fall short again and again and again, and they should. I think that the idea of the Trinity is one of those concepts when we do try to articulate it, because we lack the words, we try to get some illustrations, some metaphors, and even the metaphors that have come up to describe the Holy Trinity, the three in one, three persons in one being who are the same and who are different, who are unique and who are singular. Those illustrations, too, tend to not really cut it. There has been descriptions of a three-leaf clover. But then that shows their distinctness, but not necessarily their unity. There has been a description of ice and water and vapor. But that shows God working in different ways at different times and not necessarily being the same, consistent throughout all time. There are the sun and its rays and the heat and light that we receive from it, but it is as if one creates the other and they're not really the same source. They all fall short. And in fact, some of them, if a faith tradition has been latched on to this metaphor, become un-Christian. They go so far as to, if we isolate ourselves and say that this is the way that we understand God, it eliminates some of the other descriptions that we have come to know about the fullness of God that we have encountered in Jesus. And so the early church, much of those early discussions that the churches had with each other, that the early Christians who had followed Jesus themselves had in those early days, were wrestling with this idea of how do we know this person of Jesus to be God? How do we describe that? How do we explain that? How do we understand that ourselves? And those discussions and wrestlings with each other and with those descriptions ended up lending themselves to the best that we can do is come up with a bottom line statement that we call a creed. It's a statement that says, I believe X and Y. And you notice that in those creeds, we talk about the Trinity, the Father, and the Son, and the Spirit, but we don't go to a lot of detail about how they work together, do we? Because once again, we're talking about the baseline of what we can believe so that we can move on together toward an understanding of God and our experience. You notice when we have these wonderful readings today, that when we walk together through Scripture and look at the presence of God fully in all and the forms of God, the Father, and the Son, and the Spirit, we go all the way back to creation. We go all the way back to the beginning. And we see that God is fully present in that moment. We see that God is present above the waters, even before anything is formed. And we see God calling out life in this chaos, bringing order and light to darkness, stepping in and breathing life into the mud, into Adam, that word means of the earth. Breathing life into our experience, drawing us out of the mud. And you notice probably those words, which always captivate me, but you probably notice them today. Let us make humankind in our image. On this day when we're talking about the Trinity, when we're talking about God as this multiple unity, if that's a thing, we see the words that are plural in God's speech. Let us make humankind in our image. And it's interesting, isn't it, that when it is a quotation from God, when it is what God is saying, it is plural. But the very next sentence, when it is our words describing what God did, it is singular. Because once again, our understanding doesn't even come close to the reality. And our words fall short, even in Scripture, to describe who God is and what God is doing. But it's important to notice, that we bear the image of God. That God decided to share God's image with us. And make no mistake, when we talk about the image of God, we're not talking about fingers and toes. We're not talking about a human form that is shaped like the form of God. There's a wonderful meme that I've seen before that says, God is not two dudes and a bird. God is not two human forms and a Holy Spirit that kind of flutters down and is something else. God is not like us, but we are like God because the image that we bear is one of a creating God who makes space for us to breathe life, to call out life out of the chaos of the world. And so we, as a community of faith, bear the image of God, who is a community to God's self. The community of God's people looks like the community of God. Think for a moment, if you remember any of these stories, of how God described God's self whenever God was encountered. Do you remember some times when God met somebody and introduced God's self? Maybe Moses or Joseph. Different times that God said, I am, and maybe he handed them his calling card. God's calling card, which didn't have a name. It didn't have maybe an identity. Maybe it didn't have 3 doctrinal points about how to understand God. It said, I am the God who is God to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. I am the God who led your ancestors out of slavery. I am the God who brought them across the water of the Red Sea. I am the God who redeems the broken and the forgotten. I am the God who. The descriptions that God gives God's self are of what God does. Think about it this way. One example of the Trinity that I kind of like, that doesn't hold up all the way, but I kind of like it, is like a pie, a fruit pie. And you know, a fruit pie has some kind of filling inside, and there's a crust on top and on the bottom. And if you cut those pieces, especially when it's nice and warm, like think of a blueberry pie, my favorite. You cut those pieces into a pie shape. On the top of the crust, you can see that line, but underneath, it all kind of comes back together as one. No matter how we describe God, we can't take away from the unity that God is, from the total image of who God is and what God does in the world. Our words should fall short. And I will tell you that there is no incorrect theology that will keep you from being loved by God. There is no mistaken doctrine or mistake that you will make in naming who God is, or naming a quality of the Christology that we understand, from Christology from above or Christology from below, or these ways that we understand who Jesus is, or the way that the Spirit works in the world. There's no mistake that you can make in there that will keep you from being loved by the God who made you, by the God who shapes the world, by the God who continues to call out love in our own lives. No matter how you cut it, God is still God. And we can take our cue from what God said when Moses said, "Who shall I say is sending me? Who are you to send me to Pharaoh? And God says, I am the one that is. I am the one that is. God is most accurately described as a verb, as something in motion, as something that is alive and animating our own lives in this very world that we have been called to serve, to care for, and to love. That is how we bear that image. Not just the image of Jesus, not just the image of God who is the creator, but the image of the whole God that we experience in our many different ways, and for whom there are not enough words to say. There are not enough words to describe. There are not enough words to name. So when we fall short in our descriptions of God, when we fall short in our ability to describe our faith to someone else, take that as a blessing. That maybe God is more alive in the questions of their life than in the answers. Maybe God is more alive in your struggles than in your certainties. Maybe God is more alive than we can name or say.